Hello, welcome to the World News on the Papyrus TV Africa. First, the headlines. Tanzania lift curfew. 2 French nationals free from Iranian prison. Mali leader addresses deadly fuel crisis. UN warns that insufficient global action keep climate risk high. Now the news in detail. Tanzania authorities have lifted a nighttime curfew in commercial capitals Dar es Salaam, marking the first sign of calm after a week of deadly unrest following a disputed election that handed President Samia Suluhu Hassan a controversial 98% victory. The nationwide internet shutdown that followed the election has begun to ease, though social media platforms remain restricted. Businesses have reopened cautiously and traffic had resumed in Dar es Salaam, but scars for the violence remain visible. Opposition supporters who denounced the polls as a sham clashed with security forces across several cities, prompting widespread arrests, deaths, and disappearances. Chadema, the main opposition party, claimed that at least 800 people were killed in the unrest, a figure partially supported by diplomatic sources citing over 500 deaths, though the UN Human Rights Office confirmed only 10 verified fatalities thus far. Rights groups including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International condemned what they describe as lethal force and other abuses by the security forces, urging independent investigation into killings and disappearances. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, in her swearing-in speech, acknowledged the loss of lives and damages to public property, but blamed foreign nationals for stoking unrest. Her administration's credibility, once buoyed by international reform following John Magufuli's death in 2021, now faces serious international scrutiny. Observers from the Southern Africa Development Community said the election fell short of democratic standard, citing detention of opposition leader Tundu Lissu and the exclusion of candidate Luhaga Mpina. As Tanzania struggles to restore normalcy, the shadow of repression and grief continue to hang over Africa's one promising democracy. 2 French citizens have been released from Iranian detention after more than 3 years behind bars, French and international media report. The pair's release follow months of diplomatic engagement and comes amid a broader pattern of consular negotiation that have intermediately yielded transfer or release. Details available indicate that the freed nationals were among several Western citizens who were detained in Iran on a variety of charges. Their liberation was welcomed by French officials who described the development as a relief and underlined ongoing consular effort to secure the returns of other nationals still detained. Human rights and legal groups have repeatedly raised concerns about use of prolonged detention in Iran, saying access to fair trials, guarantees, and international legal norms are often limited. Paris said it will continue to press Tehran on consular access, transparency of legal proceedings, and return home of remaining detainees. Mali heads of state have publicly addressed an escalating fuel crisis that has left cities short of petrol and diesel, stirred widespread unrest. The shortage, officials said, stems largely from supply lines being choked by jihadist groups that control key transit routes, a tactic that had knocked on effort for health services, agriculture, and commercial transport. The president urged calm, announced emergency measures to stabilize supplies, and asked regional allies and international partners for logical support to reopen critical routes. Security forces have been dispatched to protect convoys where possible by humanitarians and commercial organizations warn that in some regions, insecurity continues to block effective distribution. In Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, the rebel coalition known as the AFC M23 is reportedly to have established a parallel justice system in areas in control of North Kivu and adjudicating disputes independently of state institutions. The development was documented by humanitarian monitors and regional media and is raising alarm among human rights groups. According to the reports from the field, the parallel system is staffed by militia and former combatants who apply a mixture of customary rules and edicts issued by rebel administrators. Critics say such system lack due process protection, place ordinary citizens at risk of arbitrary punishment, and further erode the authority of an already fragile state judicial system. The United Nations had warned that global inaction and inadequate ambition on greenhouse gas reductions are keeping climate risk at dangerously high level, and that current policies are insufficient to prevent increasing severe heat waves, flow, and food insecurity. The statement accompanied new UN analysis highlighting gaps between national climate commitment and the emission reductions scientists say are needed to limit warming. UN officials stressed that adaptation funding for vulnerable countries remain far below what it requires to protect communities already experiencing climate shock, and call for the accelerated finance flow, technology transfer, and support for resilient measures. The message underlined a twofold problem: failure to cut emissions fast enough and failure to mobilize funds to protect the most exposed people and ecosystem. Global negotiators are being urged to translate pledges into concrete timelines and to unlock public and private investment in renewable energy, nature-based solutions, and disaster risk reduction, particularly in low-income countries that have contributed least to the climate problem, yet face the steepest consequences. Qatar Emirate has issued a public condemnation of atrocity committed by paramilitary forces in Sudan, joining chorus of regional and international leaders calling for accountability and immediate protection for civilians. The Emir's statement signaled out reports of mass killing, sexual violence, and mass displacement in Darfur and other conflict zones. Qatar, which has played a diplomatic role in part of the region, called for an immediate halt to hostility, unfettered humanitarian access, and cooperation with international investigators to document potential war crimes. The statement also urged neighboring states to support safe corridors for civilians and aid. Sudan conflict, now well over a year old in many hotspots, has prompted international alarm over large-scale human suffering, call for condemnation and accountability for prominent regional players like Qatar, add pressure for concerted diplomatic humanitarian action.
We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Papyrus Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Papyrus Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue.
A Moroccan court has handed down what authorities describe as the country's first human trafficking sentence related to Asia online scan phenomena, sending a strong signal that law enforcement is pursuing criminal networks that have exploited migrants and job seekers through fraudulent employment scheme. The verdict followed investigation into recruiters who lured victims with promises of work in Asia, then trafficked them into exploitative conditions and used them in transnational criminal network. Prosecutors said the sentence served as a precedent and urged cross-border cooperation to dismantle supply chain that facilitates trafficking. Victim support group welcomed the ruling but stressed the need for sustained protective services and preventative measures, including public awareness campaign and stronger regulation of recruitment agencies. Finally, relief convoys have begun arriving in regions hit by Hurricane Melissa after the storm caused widespread destruction across parts of the Caribbean, displacing thousands and disrupting power, water, and communication network. International relief agencies, regional governments, and UN partners mobilize emergency supply, food, water purification kits, shelter materials, and medical team to the hardest hit communities. Logistic challenges remain. Damaged ports, flooded roads, and persistent weather hampered rapid distribution, leaving some remote communities dependent on aerials drop. Search and rescue team continue recovery operations. An early assessment warned of heightened risk of waterborne disease as sanitation systems were interrupted. Authorities urged survivors to register at aid points so assistance could be prioritized, and donors pledged additional emergency funding to meet immediate need while planning for long-term recovery, including rebuilding resilient infrastructure. This has been the Papyrus TV Africa.